Welcome you back to the Patrick Netherton Show here on 1130 The Tiger. He's Rogers, I'm Patrick. We're pleased to welcome in the voice of the number one team in the land, the Gonzaga Bulldogs. He is Tom Hudson in Indianapolis with the mighty Zags getting ready for a Final Four trip. Tom, how are you, man?
Yeah, I'm doing great, thanks. It's been kind of an interesting trip out here. I've been here since the beginning, so I'm getting settled in here. I almost feel like I'm a resident of Indianapolis, but it's much better than the alternative. We're winning basketball games, and that's a good thing.
No, it's not bad at all. Hey, I do have to ask you before we get into Gonzaga. You had a pretty sweet flow going with your hair when we were up there. Have you kept that thing, or have you trimmed it up for the tournament?
I'm impressed that you remember. I trimmed it up.
Okay.
We got to a point in my home where it wasn't very good for me
Gotcha.
in my wife's eyes.
Yeah.
So and and I've done a bunch of dumb stuff. I actually have a picture that makes Timmy's Fu Manchu kind of not look so good. I had one going for about 3 or 4 months, and she kind of put up with that, but the mullet was just a little bit too much, so I cleaned it up before I came out here.
I got you. Well, speaking of people putting up with mustaches, you mentioned Drew Timme, and his mom is kind of in the same boat. She's having to put up with this thing. And that's kind of been a fun story all year long is Timmy's facial hair. And of course, obviously, we had a lot of fun with that with our kid Larry Owens while we were out there. So the thing I like about this Gonzaga team, Tom, is that they're very likable, and especially Drew Timme, and he kind of leads the brigade in that regard. And to me, that makes you easier to root for when you're not a bunch of just robots playing basketball. You actually have some guys with some personality.
No, I agree. And I think that's what's been fun about this group. Is that, Drew leads the charge. He's a little bit out there, and I mean that in the most flattering of ways. He really is. He's a fun kid. He's a fun-loving kid. And I think he kind of helps set the tone. But, even Corey Kispert's a pretty serious kid. Joel, some of our leaders. But that being said, they still know how to have a good time. And I think, Drew was asked kind of his relationship with Coach Few and, and how he tried to kind of keep him loose. And I think this group, which is, I don't want to say it's unique entirely, but, they have a lot of fun off the floor. They do goof around a little bit. So everybody's been talking about all the pressure of this and that and undefeated and all the other stuff. I think these guys, that they're pretty loosey-goosey. And then when it comes time to walk on the floor, as you saw, they're as competitive a group as Coach Few says he's ever had.
Yeah.
When it's time to play basketball, and Southern Cal figured that out in a hurry. It didn't take but 3 minutes to see that this team, everybody was talking about their defense, and we got after them in a hurry. So, yeah, it's really a fun group. Like you said, they're great kids. They're having a wonderful time with all of this. And then, like I said, when it's time to play, look out because they've really taken it to task so far.
Well, and that's the interesting thing about this team, Tom, is even during a pandemic, Coach Few and his crew were able to schedule a really tough non-conference schedule. The West Virginias and the Iowas of the world to be able to really go in and play some quality opponents. Even during a regular season, a non-COVID season, that non-conference schedule that they put together was as good as you could have gotten even in a non-conference season. A regular non-COVID season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, that's something that Coach Few has done here over the years. And I think he does a great job when he's recruiting people because, look, our league gets knocked, and our league has gotten a lot better. It really has, from the middle to the top. BYU made it in this year. We would have had 3 teams in last year. So I think it's getting better. But realistically, if you're recruiting a kid like Jalen Suggs or, the kid that just committed out of Omaha last week, you've got to go and sell, hey, we're going to go and play these really high-level games. And the fun thing has been is not just scheduling them, but now being in a position where, you've got a great chance to win them. Like you said, this year, we had a handful of those games. And then, just the ability to go and schedule. We played Virginia in Fort Worth the day after Christmas. And that game came together in less than a week. They were talking, 6 days before. It's like, hey, you know what? We want a game. You want a game? Let's go. And I give him a ton of credit for that because, our schedule was pretty darn good. Before they had the whole COVID thing, and they were okay. Orlando got canceled, and we've kind of got to adjust and do some stuff. But the one they put together was incredible. I mean, we played some of the best teams in the country, and gosh, I think we're 6-0 now against top 20 teams. I know people are top 25 teams. I guess USC was 23rd. People try to kind of knock our conference, like I said, but they played really good against some of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's easy to say, well, your conference schedule is what it is, but if you're going out and challenging yourself in the non-conference, and obviously you were, I'm looking at this schedule: Kansas, Auburn, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, as you mentioned, they got kind of thrown together at the last minute. That's nothing to sneeze at. The only one that didn't get played, which was kind of the disappointment, was Baylor, but I kind of have a feeling that one's going to get played next week. So I guess my major thing with Gonzaga is I don't think it's fair to say this team just ran over the West Coast Conference, because they challenged themselves in non-conference play, a bunch of neutral site games, which sort of replicates what you're getting in the tournament. I think Mark Few has this team uniquely prepared for the NCAA tournament.
I do too, and I think what he has been able to do with this group, like you said, we scheduled those games, and then we have run through. I mean, it's incredible. 27 straight games we've won by double digits.
Mm-hmm.
The only game that we didn't win by double digits this year was when we played West Virginia, actually here in Indianapolis, before we were supposed to play Baylor, and that game got canceled because of COVID. But we beat them by 5, and outside of that. And that's kind of my thing with our conference. Whenever people try to, hold that against us, we won our conference games by an average of, I think, 24 points or 25 points. So it wasn't like, we struggled and we just kind of made it through barely a little bit. And yeah, we're undefeated, but, we could have lost 4 or 5 games. I mean, this team just dominated the WCC. And so, I think that is great to see, because one of the things Coach Few, I think what makes him such a good coach, is his attention to detail and his want to play a good game. We have teams in our league, like I think in every league, there are the couple of teams at the bottom where you say, okay, look, if we show up, we're going to win this game. This is just going to happen. Now, the question is, do you just show up and win the game, or do you show up and play to the standard that you've set? And Coach Few does an unbelievable job of making sure that the guys are dialed in and ready to play. We haven't, had too many games this year where you've been overly disappointed in the effort. I mean, obviously with the skill, the numbers have been so impressive, but, there haven't really been many games, maybe 1 or 2, where you kind of felt like the guys weren't 100% dialed in. But like I said, I think that's one of the best things he does as a head coach, is that, his teams are just as prepared, to play the game against last place Portland on January, the 14th, as they were to play against Iowa, or as they were to play against Kansas. And I think that's been a huge part of his success.
And just for a moment, pat Northwestern State on the back. I don't know a lot of coaches that would have, while sitting in the Tulsa airport, getting ready to fly up there, facing already 2 games in 3 days between Gonzaga and Washington State. I don't know a lot of coaches that would have then pulled the trigger on a second game against the number 1 team in the country at their place, thereby giving you 3 games in 3 days in the Pacific Northwest. But Mike McConaughey and his crew pulled the trigger, made for one of the most unique set of circumstances I've ever seen. And it made for some cool stories. I mentioned Larry Owens and Drew Timme kind of having some fun back and forth with the mustache celebration. The Demons scored 61 in the second half of the second game, which was kind of the high water mark, at least in non-conference play, and a memory those guys will have for a long time. I thought that was unique in the fact that Mark Few basically said, hey, look, we're not going to get better practicing. Let's spend a little extra money, a little more guarantee money, and let's play Northwestern State twice. And Mike McConaughey went for it, and it turned into kind of a fun adventure.
Well, it did. It was really fun. And I think, too, one of the great things for me about that game was, scheduling that second one, like you said, kind of at the last minute, was, hey, nobody had to do that. You had some teams. I mean, yeah, why would you play 3 games in 3 days in a normal season, right? But it was like, hey, look, we're in this unique situation. And why not? We're gonna play these guys. We're gonna let it rip. And like you said, I mean, he scored 61 in the second half, and played well and competed really hard. And that's kind of the one that we kind of gauge when teams come in. When you watch the effort. I mean, because hey, you come in and you're playing at the number 1 team in the country. We've won 51 straight home games, I think. I mean, it's so hard to come in there and win games. But the question is, do you come in and represent yourself well and play hard? And go the entire 40 minutes. And I thought Northwestern State did just that. Like you said, that second half was pretty darn impressive. And and credit to Coach for coming in there and saying, hey, yeah, we're going to do this again. We'll play one more time. And because, Coach Few was really looking for some games. We were struggling because we'd lost those 5 games due to COVID.
Right.
And we wanted to play basketball. I mean, that was Coach's thing, is like you said, practice isn't going to do us much more good. We've been able to practice. We need to get games in. So, yeah, I thought that was really cool. That was a fun couple of days. And I know it couldn't have been easy, as you found out, driving down to Pullman and playing down there and then running back up the road to Spokane. Sometimes can be a little dicey in the winter.
Well, actually, the toughest part about that whole schedule was Washington was shut down in terms of restaurants. You couldn't dine in, which in Louisiana we could still dine in. So even though you're socially distanced and you're masked up and all of that, so we end up going to a place in Spokane. We sit outside. They said, hey, we've got a covered, we basically got a tent set up outside. It was 30 degrees outside. They had the tent. They had a heater. Heater didn't work. So we go out to eat, and my poor SID, Jason Pugh, is freezing his buns off because the heater doesn't stay on. And so we're trying to enjoy what was a pretty nice meal. But unfortunately, you didn't get to, we didn't get to really experience Spokane because we were kind of trapped in the hotel.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you 2 things. That's a shame, but we've had a couple of those experiences where we've tried to go, and that was one of the things for us on the east side of the state, where we have a lot colder winters than they do on the west side, where decisions are made. Say, okay, great, I can put up a tent and it's going to be 15 degrees and I can sit outside. Okay, let's put a heater in there. Okay, well, now all the heater does for me is burn the top of my head.
Right.
Right. So you're not even comfortable. If your guys' heaters would have been working, I don't know how comfortable you would have been. But that is a shame because to be honest, I think I told you before, Patrick. I'm a Texas guy. I was raised in Houston, and and I've been up in Spokane now since 1996. I mean, I moved up there and had every intention of moving back home. And it's a great community. Like I said, I've been there, and obviously working for Gonzaga has been a big part of that. But hopefully you guys can come back up again and you can experience in a normal year. We're finally getting moving up there, so hopefully by the time I get home, things will be working a little bit better.
Good. Well, by the way, you make my producer Rogers Hampton happy to say you're a Houston native because he does have his Houston, Texas shirt on. Not Houston Texans, Houston, Texas. It's literally just a shirt that says Houston, Texas with the state and a star over Houston and an oil derrick. That's all.
Rogers, that's awesome work. Hey, every morning I pull out my Don't Mess with Texas mug and I put it up and pour a cup of coffee into it just to let everybody in the house know that's what we are. So good for you. I'm with you.
There you go, brother. Love you blue, baby. Love you blue.
Talking to Tom Hudson, the voice of the Gonzaga Bulldogs. All right, so tremendous run through the tournament. Now you get down to it's UCLA and it's Baylor or Houston on the other side. Do you I mean, at this point, do you get nervous calling games at this point? Is the Final Four one of those things where, okay, I'm gonna have some nerves going in because obviously you want this team to win. I want y'all to win. I think it would be awesome to see that crew win. But do you come in have some emotional investment in these next couple of games?
Absolutely. And it's funny. You seem to lose sleep a little bit more as the tournament rolls on. And I think you do kind of have this sense that, hey, it's, you're getting close to the end one way or the other, and as Coach Few talks about this all the time. These seasons are journeys, right? Mm-hmm. And as it's going on, you do get invested, and you're invested, in the kids, and obviously invested in doing a good job, and, invested in the fans that, that are listening, that want to talk to you throughout the year about the games and everything else, right? So as you get closer to it, you kind of feel like, okay, wow, this thing, it's going to be coming to an end here at some point, one way or the other. And then, obviously the part of getting here and playing for national championship, getting this deep where you're going to have a chance potentially. In 2017 when we were down in Phoenix, well, it was nerve-wracking. It really was in a very positive way, but you are kind of thinking through all of this stuff and really want to make sure that you're dialed in and you've got people asking. I've been asked a few times, okay, do you have your call yet? Hey, have you been sitting in your hotel room, practicing, your call if you win the national title or if you make it to the Final Four or whatever happens, So that gets into your head just a little bit too, because, I don't know about for you. I think everybody's different in how they prepare and they do things. I'm not a big, bunch of catchphrase guy. Yeah. I kind of, make sure that I'm prepared and I just go with what I'm doing. And so now all of a sudden, you're sitting around and staring at the ceilings in the hotel room, and what, do I come up with something catchy? Well, wait a second, that's not who I am. But
right.
Wait a second, I need to have something. I just can't say, hey, Gonzaga won, So
yeah.
It's interesting, like you said, and you feel it. I will say it was a little bit interesting in there yesterday, Patrick, because they split the Lucas Oil Stadium in half, so there's a court on each side, and you didn't have this. There were fans there, which was great, but you didn't have the great energy, and I think especially for us making that first run in 2017, it was awesome. I was just talking to one of our administrators that I saw for lunch today, and we were talking about how great it was back then because for us we're calling a game on the floor. Well, now we're up in the stands, and everybody's kind of down there. And when we won to go to the Final Four, everybody's out in the court and they're hugging and we're down there and smiling and laughing and talking to everybody while we're on the air, and slapping high fives. And, here it's a little bit different. So it was a little bit, kind of a strange feeling. I didn't have that nervous energy as much yesterday because I don't think you quite felt the excitement. But it's definitely there. And, and I'm fortunate. I mean, to be in a place where, I'm getting my second Final Four opportunity. I always tell people, I hope you get an opportunity to do it sometime, just get to the tournament and be able to have a chance because it's something special. It really is a lot of fun.
Well, as the voice of Northwestern State, we had our Final Four opportunity in 2006 when we beat Iowa as a 14 seed. That's, that it's kind of a relative Final Four, if you will. Tom Hudson, the voice of Gonzaga. All right, so before we let you go, you mentioned you've been there for a bit. We talked about the bubble situation. Everyone's kind of having to stay in the hotel, the food's being brought in, all of that stuff. Kind of what are your protocols as you're going along here? Are you tier 1 with the team? Are you tier 3 with the media? Kind of how are you working things?
Yeah, I'm in tier 3. It's interesting because if you're in tier 1, you can have no contact with anybody outside of tier 1.
Mm-hmm.
I guess with the exception of tier 2, I think the bus drivers and whatever. So if you are in the bubble, I mean, we have our athletic director is inside the bubble. And I've seen him on the court a couple times, but you can't have any kind of physical contact with anybody. So, I'm outside of it in more kind of in my own, thing of trying to lay pretty low and just not get too caught up. I mean, there have been some nights where, there have been a lot of people out. I mean, having 68 teams here, that there were quite a few fans. And, after we played Norfolk State, I came out of the building. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and there was a band playing and there were people kind of out and about. And so, I've been trying to lay a little bit low. I mean, I've been going out and having dinner, and hanging out with some people a little bit. But, what's also weird is not having gone home. Pretty much everybody else did that was outside of the bubble.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's, it was 4 or 5 days of just kind of talking to myself. And, I've been to a few museums, which is nice. The weather's been decent, so I have been able to get out. But it has been kind of crazy. And I will say, and I've said this a few times, that, I know there have been some folks out there that have, kind of been bagging on the NCAA, and I've heard Coach Few talk about it, and I agree with him. I think they've done a remarkable job with this thing. To bring 68 teams into one city, and considering that every single person in each one of those travel parties was being tested every single day, just the logistics of that to get it done, I think was pretty impressive. And then, they had 12 practice courts set up at the convention center, so the teams could get in and practice. Making sure that people are getting food, like you said, just the logistics. I mean, if you wanted to bring somebody who's inside the bubble, if you wanted to bring them something, you literally had to walk through a police barricade to get to the hotel, drop it off with security, and the security would call whoever it was that you were, leaving your item for. You would have to leave, and then, the person would come down. So, they've come up with just about every, scenario, and I think they've done a really nice job. I mean, the one thing that is hard is to watch the parents and the players, because they can't interact at all.
Right.
And so, last night watching, Drew Timme's parents were sitting a little bit in front of me, and you could see them just kind of looking down and waving at Drew, who's down on the court, 200 yards away because you're playing in a football stadium, and just trying to get a little wave, and there's no hugs, there's no, high fives with your dad. There aren't a lot of conversations taking place. So that part's hard, but I think all in all, it's been a pretty good experience. I wouldn't ever want to do it again. Hopefully this thing goes back, next year we're talking just about basketball, but it has been, I think, pretty darn well run. And so, here we are at Final Four, and hopefully it just, smooth sailing until Monday, one way or the other.
Yeah, let's just get through Monday. It has been pretty remarkable. And Tom, look, we're pulling hard for you, man. It was a delight to be up there and meet you guys and play twice and get to have those memories. Obviously, if you go in and win the national championship, folks at Northwestern State will say we lost to the national champion. They'll talk about that for the rest of their lives. And obviously, Larry Owens has a pretty cool story as well. So we're pulling hard for you, brother, and we hope y'all get it done this weekend.
Hey, I appreciate it. I really do. And, give me a call next week. Hopefully we're talking national championship. Let's do that. We'll have a little bit of fun.
No doubt about that. Tom, thank you, brother.
I thought you absolutely. Take care. Great talking to you.
All right. Tom Hudson, the voice of the Gonzaga Bulldogs.